Hi, my name is Britt Machado, and I am the owner and lead designer at JohnnyCakes, an interior design studio and retailer based in Providence. And today I'm here to take you behind the zhush, a look inside of our interior design process. We want you to understand that an interior designer might actually be a great partner in your project. While we do work on whole home and commercial renovations down to the studs, and we love those projects, we also love to partner with our clients who might need help at different points in their process. That might be getting a project that's been long dormant off the ground. Maybe it's because you and your partner haven't quite known where to start and you need some help sorting through styles and logistics and things like that, and we can help you with there. Maybe you've started a project and things have gone a little off the rails, and we can help you either course correct or help you get that project the last mile and get it done so you can enjoy your space. So come along on this journey behind the zhush. So the very first part of our interior design process, besides you getting in touch with us, is the consult. The consult is no strings attached. It's just a really nice way for us to see, hey, is this a great fit? Especially if you're trying to figure out, do I need an interior designer? What could an interior designer even do for me? This is a great way to just dip your toe into the pool and see if that water might be right for you. When we come out to a consult, it's not as scary as it sounds, I promise you. We basically just come to your site, or if you want to meet with us digitally as well, we get to know your space and we get to know you. And this is just a time for us to explore, what are you looking to accomplish? What are some of your pain points? And then also, what is your personality? What are your likes and your dislikes? What are some design inspirations you have? We're also looking at the physical structure itself. What are the realities of the space? As we're going through this consultation, which is up to 90 minutes, we are just starting to ingest the project. It could be this is just a one-time thing. This is the one time that you call us and say, hey, we just need you to break the ice a little bit. We will do that for you. So an example of that is we had a client give us a call, had a rental property, and they know that this is not their forever home, and they had invested in some pieces, but due to the nature of the space itself, there were some unusual things they needed to accommodate, and although they had tried lots of different things, nothing was quite clicking. After we learned what had worked and what hadn't worked, we went over there and we actually helped them reconfigure some pieces in the house and reimagine what some of the spaces might be, and that was that. And they sent us pictures, and we've stayed in touch, and we get cute pictures of their dog, and it's been a really wonderful service in that limited capacity. On the other side of the spectrum, if you want to book us for a consult and then you do decide to use us for a larger capacity, we waive that consultation fee that you might otherwise just pay as a one-time fee. So book a consult with JohnnyCakes today. We'll have fun and we'll get to help you set your project off to some success. So we've talked about the consult, and now we're going to go ahead and talk about the develop phase. The develop phase is inherent in any interior designer's process, but here at JohnnyCakes, we use this time to really work through on paper some of the questions, the ideas, the costs, the goals, the timelines in detail, so that when we get to actually starting to swing a hammer or roll a paintbrush, we know what we're doing, where we're going, and why. Our goal as your interior designer is not to put rules around you. We're your trail guide to make sure we're staying on the path and to help you get where you want to be going, and to bring the expertise to accomplish your goals while keeping our eyes due north. So the design brief is the North Star for our project. In this design brief, which is a physical document, we are capturing the work we do to develop things like color palette, materials, design inspirations, historical references, key custom pieces, and it's also capturing if you are looking to age in place, or you have ability accommodations, or other things that we might need to take into consideration throughout the design process. That all gets put in this document. We've been asked by clients who say, why do I have to have this? I don't want to be so rigid. This document is not intended to be rigid. It's intended to be a flexible, living, evolving process. But it is something where we say, hey, listen, we all agree on a vision, and unless there's a reason we need to completely deviate from the vision, it helps us just stay on course. And this thing becomes how we talk internally and how we talk externally. It becomes our common language. And this is so important because the design process can sometimes take time. And during that, you're being introduced to all kinds of cool things and ideas. And there's so many times where we're like, I want to do that, I want to do that, I want to do that. The design brief is a little bit like the bumpers in a bowling alley. It helps us get to our goal and provide some guardrails as we sort of bump along the way when you come to us and you say, I love that thing. And it allows us as your interior designer to say, oh, interesting, totally love it, let's do it. It also could be that we say, we like the idea of that. It requires a little bit of adjustment. Let's figure out how to do that. And there are also other times when we as your interior designers will say, hey, listen, that's actually for a completely other house or a completely other office. Let's leave that there for another project, but let's appreciate what that idea is. Because the design brief is such an essential part of the process, we've actually made a graphic to help illustrate how we think about it. So you'll see that the design brief is at the very core of the interior design process. It can be as specific as what we did for a design client who recently merged households and we're looking for someone to basically almost be a relationship therapist for them, to help them understand what were their individual goals for the space, what were some of the quote unquote ghosts that were living in the house from past relationships, taking into consideration family space, and thinking through all of those personal and sociological and psychological experiences. And then on top of that, them coming to us and saying, we don't actually really have much of a design POV. Can you help us figure out what we want? So we met with them, understanding a lot more about them and their needs, their fears and their concerns. And we put together paint colors, very specific paint colors, brands, etc. We helped them get quotes for key pieces of work and figuring out budget. We helped them understand what they needed to do in terms of personal organization to be able to prep the space to be able to accomplish the work they wanted. We helped them understand their personal preferences and security concerns for window treatments and other privacy elements of the house. And then we also looked at what are lighting elements that they needed to replace. Some was just replacing fixtures and others helping them think through, well, if we want to move this and we want to repurpose this space, it's going to require this type of subcontractor work to accomplish that. Here are some possible things you might want to think through. So we put all that together in a document for them and they went on their merry little way, and now they get to execute it in their own time, in their own way, and they have something that will help guide them on their path. When you work with JohnnyCakes in a larger capacity, let's say like a whole home renovation, this design brief becomes the core North Star for where the project is going. So we had some clients contact us. They had purchased a historical home, and although they had experience renovating and building in other places in the country, this was their first time doing it with these stakes, frankly. They wanted to work with an interior designer who could be a creative partner to their general contractor, who was doing some very tricky and intensive work to think through how would we make this historical property functional for us to age in place, but also capture our very eclectic style. And they also had some really large collections. So they needed us to think through the historical references of the house, their personal styles, cultural identities, and they needed help incorporating their collections into the design DNA of the home. So we had a much more intense process of creating this design brief, and it ends up being this robust document, but it's the thing that we are using to talk with the general contractor, specialty services, and saying, hey, if we're talking about producing this kind of drape, it needs to feel like this historical reference. Or we're talking with a carpenter, here's the reason why it needs to be built in this particular way, and allows us to have a more informed conversation with the carpenter who has expertise, who can say, if you are dealing with delicate objects, here's a way we can build this and actually specify it specifically to your client. And it helps us really dig into the heart of those customizations. So once we have an approved by you design brief, we move into the design concept. So that is taking those big ideas and starting to apply visualizations to them, where we get to safely test ideas on paper before we make a major financial investment into application. That could be everything from creating CAD drawings of your space with some of these ideas applied. It could be floor layouts. It could be actually going to begin to source materials to stress test the ideas we have. It's actually starting to pull together and visualize what we've put some ideas around. And this is very fun. This is where we start to actually begin to play and experiment with fabrics and other things. Hand in hand with the design concept is product identification. So not only are we looking at the materials for your physical space, like tiles, paint, and stone, and anything else that might be for your physical structure, but we're also looking at key anchor pieces for your space. It could be a sofa, lighting, it could be a fabulous chair. These might be things in your existing collection, or these might be products that we need to go out into the marketplace and shop for. And this is also when working with an interior designer has a big advantage. We're able to access a realm of products that unless you have trade access, you can't access. Unfortunately, that's how it works. But we start to pull together the universe of things that fit your budget, style, and our lead times. And we are presenting these things to you as ideas, and we say, okay, are we headed in the right direction here? Yes, no. What's the anchor piece if we have one, etc. So this is the final little piece of the develop phase. We've got the design brief, the design concept, and product identification. And this is where we do all that idea work. And then we move into the next phase. We're going to talk about the prepare phase. The prepare phase is when we're actually starting to take those ideas, those concepts, those drawings, and we're beginning to figure out how we're actually going to implement them. Interior design is inherently a group project, and our goal as the interior designer is to be the one that's making sure everyone is doing what they need to do so we can all get an A+. So the very first step in the prepare phase is to create a team. And this is actually one of the most important parts of the entire design process, because having the correct people involved on the project is what makes or breaks the entire thing. And so we at JohnnyCakes have been really carefully curating a list of preferred vendors across many disciplines, and we can offer those vendors to you. Those are the people who are going to actually be performing the work, because we as our interior designers are helping you come up with a creative plan, and then we're bringing people in to actually execute those things. And depending on the scope of work, we might very likely be working with a general contractor. So a general contractor is someone who is licensed to perform structural work, to make alterations to the bones of a place, to make sure that permits are pulled and that we're in compliance, not only with regulations, but just in terms of best practices. They also have specialties in terms of thinking through how we can alter structures or preserve things from a historical perspective. And so the interior designer, us, and the general contractor work very, very closely hand in hand, but we perform different types of things. Now, if your project doesn't require a general contractor, you might need someone who's going to be thinking about how each step is being executed in your project. So that is where JohnnyCakes as a project manager might be a good fit for you as well. When we are project managing, it's different from interior design in the sense of we are doing a lot more hands-on coordination, making sure that materials and vendors are lined up in a much more specific level of detail, and then we're actually helping to get that work executed. That is something that is a different type of service where we're making sure that the work is teed up correctly, executed correctly, and we might be on site performing those services or overseeing those services. That is different from interior design, where we might be recommending a wallpaper hanger, but when we're performing project management services, we're making sure that the wallpaper hanger has all the materials, has the correct measurements, the drawings, and then is showing up on site, making sure that we're troubleshooting questions with them, maybe coordinating the wallpaper hanger with the electrician or the plasterer or the painter, making sure that all of those people who are involved in making sure that piece of work gets done are coordinated and everything is going in the correct order. Once we have that team in place, we're working on our construction and product plans. What are the details, the drawings, the specifications that we need to accomplish some of those brass tacks, structural changes in your project? But also, if we're doing some customizations like built-ins or custom furniture, this is when we start to work with the vendors to create the drawings and the specifications. What is the material cost, labor cost, etc. So we start planning for those more in depth and actually securing plans. And then after that, we are working on budget, we're working on timelines, and then we're confirming and we're scheduling. And this means that we've all agreed on the plan, on the people, and on the scope of work. And we're gonna start actually lining those people up. And this is partially what JohnnyCakes will execute in terms of certain vendors and also your general contractor. But again, we're working with them very closely at all times as this work progresses. And once we get that confirm and schedule phase done, we're officially moving into the next phase. We are now moving into the execute phase. So we have a plan, we have a team, we have a schedule, and we have a budget. And now we actually get to begin doing stuff, which is super fun. So this is when, if we have any demolition happens here. That could be anything from like taking a project literally down to the studs and moving walls and reinforcing structures. But it also could be something as simple as replacing countertop or removing old tile or doors, etc. So we're taking things out that no longer need to be there, and we're getting the structure down to the place where we can begin building it up in the way that we want to. If you are working with a general contractor, they're generally overseeing this part of the process. We're very involved. We're making sure that the specs are correct and things are going in the right places. And this is also, once we've done the demolition, where we begin to do the construction, rebuilding walls, replacing cabinets, put plaster back on walls, and prepping it for the base layer of applications. So when we talk about applications, we're talking about things that are moving us in the direction of finished product. So the very base layer of a project is things that go on the floors, the walls, and in the ceilings. So we're talking about making sure that the flooring is installed correctly, the walls are refinished or installed and plastered and looking beautiful. We're making sure the ceilings are repaired or replastered. We're making sure that moldings and other historical elements are intact and in the right places, and they are prepared for people who are going to performing services like wall coverings, painting, different kinds of treatments, but we're making sure that everybody understands which pieces are in place and which ones are going before the others. Once we have that base layer of finishes applied, we now move into installation. And what do we mean by that? We're talking about things like cabinetry. You can't put cabinets on an unfinished floor. So once the floor is done, we can put cabinets in. We're talking about things like installing tile, light fixtures, things that are going to have a permanent home, but need to have other things completed before they can go in. So the installation phase is when you really start to see a little bit more of the shape of the project. And we can now bring in really fun pieces like furniture and decor. And that moves us into the final phase of execute, which is finalizing the design. So along the way, we've had a vision, we've had a plan. We sometimes just say, hey, we're not totally sure about that as a group, or we need to figure out what this looks like in order to make a decision about this other thing. So for example, we know that we want to have a particular wall color and we have a couple of lighting fixtures, and maybe we know the type of window treatment that we want. But when we have the paint and the lighting in there, it changes our experience of the space, and we want to make sure that we're choosing the correct window treatment to filter light, or emphasize light, or block light in the way that you, the client, are looking for. So we're making sure that we're not making decisions before we know exactly what we want them to be in the finalization process. This might happen in stages. So for example, things that we're doing in the living room might not be happening at the same time as the longer term plan to execute in the kitchen. And we might be working on the design phase in the kitchen still while we're executing on the living room, because that's the later part of the process. Congratulations, you've done it. You've made it to the final phase, and this is the wrap out phase. This is the phase when you get to finally make the project yours. You have gone through the design process. You've developed and you've thought through all the details. The preparation process. You've really taken a hard look at the numbers and the people. Then you've executed. You've had your space turned upside down. There's been dust, people in and out of your space. You've been displaced, and or you've had to live through the construction. And now you get to personalize your space. This is when we take any final design decisions that need to be made and implement them, whether that's final furniture, art, decor, accent lighting, but it's also when we bring in your personal effects, things that make the space feel like you. This is when you look around and you go, oh my gosh, this is what I was thinking. This is hopefully better than what I even thought it would be. And you get to start to breathe easily. Then we also style. So we're taking all of those final pieces and we're making sure that they're in the right places and they're feeling right. You've just made an investment into your space. Let's make it look as good as it possibly can. And the final step is photography. We're photographing the space, not just because you want to show off your space to friends, family, and strangers online, but because you've also made an investment where you want to showcase the added value to your property, to your commercial space, to whatever it is. And this is the time when your space is going to look the best it will ever look. So let's capture that photography now, and you can have that when you need to have this space out in the marketplace in some capacity. And that's it. That's all there is to the zhush. You went behind the scenes and now you know. Hopefully we've been able to break it down for you, make the interior design process feel a little less of a mystery when we look at beautiful images in magazines or online. Sometimes it's hard to know what went into creating those things. Whether you're trying to make it into Architectural Digest or you just want to have your living room be more functional for your family, we would love to talk with you about what you need to make the space feel like you, meet your needs, and help you live out your wildest dreams. So if you would like help zhuzhing up your space, get in touch with us. We would love to chat and take you on your own journey to zhush. If you're interested in learning if JohnnyCakes might be a right fit for you, you can go ahead and book a consultation. Doesn't matter where you are, we can do it virtually as well. You can book that directly through our website. You also can get in touch via email. We're team@johnnycakesdesign.com. You can also find us pretty much on every major platform. In fact, you're probably watching this from one of those right now. Send us a message. Otherwise, hopefully we'll see you sometime at our retail location on Broadway in Providence, where you can check out our amazing collection of artisan-made goods, lighting, furniture, decor, and bring home a little piece of zhush for yourself. And until then, we wish you well, we wish you happiness, and we wish you lots of zhush. What is zhush? Zhush is zhush. This is just a fun way for us to say taking something and making it a little bit more exciting or giving it a little something extra.